Misinformation, disinformation I find fascinating because it works on the really big scale and on the really small scale as well. We're going to get to a point before that where these things are so similar to being alive and conscious and intelligent that we just won't know the difference, right? It's essentially mathematics. It's zeros and ones, it's algorithms that are driving forward this incredible era of humanity that we find ourselves in. That's gone.
Yeah.
That's the biggest rule change of all for me, I think, with this sort of stuff. Like, there's never been less barrier to accessing that information now in some ways if you want. You have to have the curiosity to do it. Because if you just go too hard, or I'll get round to it, or I'll wait till it's really important, I think you're going to miss a spot on a fast-moving, really important bus.
Welcome to Rules Don't Apply, where we're speaking with pioneers, provocateurs, and purveyors of non-conventional wisdom. Recorded alongside a live audience at South by Southwest Sydney, this series seeks to redefine the art of the possible. Because for those looking to navigate what's next, the rules of today may just no longer apply. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another very special episode of The Growth Distillery. I'm joined by Adam Spencer.
Oh, woohoo, yeah!
Yes. Yeah, give him a round of applause.
Amazing!
So, for those that have been living under a rock, I am joined by
Better looking than I thought.
Yeah, one of Australia's radio and TV icons, but also a leading commentator on AI, the future of work, cybersecurity, and the ChatGPT revolution. Adam, you were working towards a PhD in pure mathematics.
Yes.
Before you began a 30-year diversion into radio and TV that has seen him post 2 top-ranking breakfast shows, multiple TV productions, the author of 7 best-selling maths books, delivering one of the nerdiest TED Talks on massive prime numbers, entertaining millions of Australian geeks, and a world-class conversationalist, if you do say so yourself.
I'll take that. I wrote it myself.
He's also the University of Sydney's first ever ambassador for mathematics and science, and is aligned to some amazing charitable causes. You are on the board of directors of Red Kite. You've raised $90 million for adult cancer services.
Thank you.
With Dry July.
Had a bit of help with that, but
and he is also the father of 2 loving but mathematically exhausted daughters.
Yes, that's fair to say. Give me a big round of applause.
Welcome, Adam.
The way when you describe it as a 30-year diversion, that's getting pretty close to probably not coming back territory. Let's be honest.
I don't suspect anyone will be calling you Dr. Spencer anytime soon.
We could call it here. I strictly do have an honorary doctorate from Edith Cowan University for services to mathematics and the promotion of science. And honorary doctorates are interesting. Puts me in this space where technically it is Dr. Spencer. I'm not meant to say it. I'm not meant to sign things as Dr. Spencer, etc., out of respect to people who received doctorates for a formal academic thesis. But in acknowledgement of, well, you did enough work to get one, if you call me Dr. Spencer, I don't have to stop and go, hey, whoa, no, I'm not.
No to Dr. Spencer.
So you're getting this really, there was a former Australian of the Year, Governor General, who did refer to themselves as doctor when it was honorary, and that was very, don't do that.
All right, well, look, I'm very excited to get my geek on with you. And I suspect you might just be the poster child for Rules Don't Apply. So before we get into what I know you're really excited to talk to us about, and I'm equally excited to get into the future of all things generative AI, general AI, and large numbers of a prime nature.
Yeah.
How on earth did you start in pure mathematics and end up as a comedian?
So I was all right from the earliest days, pretty handy at maths.
Okay.
Used to love it. It was just a very natural language for me. I do sympathise with people who just don't get it.
Yeah.
There's open questions as to how much of it's taught better and if you get an inspirational tip, but there's certainly some people have a ceiling on what they can get in that field. I was just like, it just made sense to me. I remember the first time in year 8 that we saw the quadratic equation, x equals minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4a over 2a. Looked at that for a few seconds and went, well, how else are you going to complete a square and solve a quadratic? And it just made sense. It was a long way into my maths journey before I started to go, I'm struggling a bit here. So I was quite lucky.
Yeah.
But I was also pretty good at chat. So in high school I did a lot of debating.
Oh, yeah.
And then improv theatre at uni and things like that. And so I was a mixture of mathematically all right and could really talk a bit, which is a bit of a rare double. Around the time that I got into uni and did arts law. First person in my family to ever go to uni, had no idea what I should do, did arts law because I was good at debating. Picked maths as one of my art subjects. After a little while, didn't like economics, didn't like philosophy, realised I didn't really want to do big corporate law, dropped everything, still had mathematics at that stage. I'd only been at uni 4 years at that stage, and looking back on it, my arts degree was probably the best 9.5 years of my life. And so I thought, I want to stick at it. Got a really good honours year mark, started a PhD, and suddenly realised I actually don't know if I've got the tools in the toolkit here.
Yeah.
Most people who do PhDs in pure maths are probably better at me than maths, but they've certainly from day one of first year been focused on that big prize. Looking back, I was probably really good at getting outrageously good marks in exams without an incredibly nuanced, rich, deep understanding. I was playing that game.
Yep.
I like to say in a room of randomly selected people, I'm a maths genius. In a room of maths PhDs, as dumb as a box of hammers, right? I'm just not an elite mathematician at all. My ability to talk that language and generalise it in a way that people who don't feel it's natural to them can understand some of the beauty of mathematics is my skill. That doesn't pay the bills, as I was starting to realise halfway through a PhD that just wasn't going to get there. My girlfriend at the time enrolled me in a stand-up comedy competition, the first ever raw comedy that Triple J held. They still hold it. Undiscovered comedians up on stage for the first time, 1996, get enrolled in raw comedy. It's the first time they've ever done it, so the standard is appalling. So I win.
Yeah.
And then they go, do you want to come and hang out with the guys at the radio station? It was just a really easy decision for me to make. I was very lucky of time and place. Went off down that path and have never really come back. But that mathematics and that nerdiness has always sort of informed the conversations I want to have and the character I want to play when I'm in a media space.
Which I find is this beautiful enigma, because on one half of you, rules do apply, right? You know, great chat and great banter aren't going to get you to a mathematical proof.
No.
On the other side of the coin, rules don't apply when it comes to, you know, radio, TV and great chat. Yeah,
the niche I like to feel I've got is if I try and explain myself to someone who doesn't know my work, smarter than the funny guys, funnier than the smart guys, right? I'm not the person you want at your interview dinner doing 20 minutes of, hey, men and women, a little bit different, aren't they? Oh, you know, I've got Dave Hughes' number, I'll give it to you. He's brilliant, he'll kill it. If you go to Hughesy and say, look, we've got this IT conference, we need someone to interview a panel of experts who've just been designing this sort of stuff, and we need it to be vaguely entertaining, halfway through that sentence, Hughesy will be looking through his phone and sending you my number. That's my space.
So why the future of work, cybersecurity and Gen AI? What led you there?
I've always seen the world numerically. I've always seen the world mathematically, and I think that endpoint, or that midpoint you've just spoken about now, is the natural direction of that. A story I love to tell, and this is absolutely true. So the place I live is number 155 on its street. So my neighbour is in house 153. And when I was moving in and meeting her for the first time, and she's come out to say hi, and we're talking, and we've been talking maybe 2 minutes before I go, can I just say, 153, your house number, awesome number, because if you cube the digits and add them up, 1 cube plus 5 cube, that's 125, plus 3 cube, that's 27, equals 153. That doesn't happen very often for three-digit numbers. It happens for 153, 370, 371, and 407. This is literally about the third thing I've ever said to this woman who now realises she's going to be living next door to me. She just sort of nods and nervously backs towards her house. I just see the world that way.
The next day there's an extra deadbolt.
Exactly. But I think now this world, the Gen AI space and all that, this digital revolution, this, as Justin Trudeau put it a few years ago, pace of change has never been this fast before and will never be this slow again. It's essentially mathematics. It's zeros and ones, it's algorithms that are driving forward this incredible era of humanity that we find ourselves in.
So what are the rules that are going to change over the next 5 years with, you know, the meteoric acceleration of not just how smart AI is, but how democratised the consumption has become?
Yep.
You know, and we're seeing this, or even today.
One of the rules that, and so I often present keynotes on this sort of stuff, and when you talk to audiences, you need your own little niche sort of, you know, your trademark or whatever. So I've invented a rule.
All right.
It's called the 90-10 rule, okay? My theory is this. I think if you think about the forms of technology, the various platforms, etc., that you're regularly engaging with, I think 90% of us don't get much more than about 10% of the potential out of anything we use. Right? Think about Adobe. Think about Excel spreadsheets. Think about PowerPoint. The example I give is this watch I'm wearing here, right? So 4 years ago now, meet the woman who turned out to be the love of my life. We've been married a couple of years. I meet Leah. She's just the most amazing And I can remember about the third or fourth time we hung out just thinking, dude, this is your last chance. Like, she's amazing. Get your shit together and do everything you can to make this. So I contacted a few mates of mine, professional athlete types, and said, I'm thinking of starting to get a bit active again. You guys wear all these fitness watches. There's something like, and they all said, get the Garmin. Get a Garmin. You've got to get the Garmin. Yep, people got the Garmin. Look at him, cut like a rig down the front here, right? So I get the Garmin. You might remember when you got the Garmin, you take the watch out of the box, then you take out the instruction booklet. The instruction booklet for this online is a 147-page PDF, right? If I was going for a jog with this on and I tore a hammy, I think it could probably drive me to the hospital itself, and if I needed, just do the surgery if there was no. That's incredible, right? I use this to count my steps. And that's all. We occasionally, if we're going on a really cool walk, I'll download the map if I remember, right? There's no way I use this watch for more than 10% of what it could do, because to do so, you need a PhD in Garmin or a PhD in Adobe or a PhD. Who here can do like a PowerPoint? You can make a keynote. Yeah, hands up if you can. Yeah, of course you can, right? Yeah. If your organisation needs to make that big keynote for that big deal, do they let you do it? Fuck no. They go outside of there to a person who's spent thousands of dollars doing professional design courses in PowerPoint, so they can charge you thousands of dollars to design a deck, because to get beyond about year 9 school project level, you need a PhD in PowerPoint. What do you mean I export it as a WAV file, park it there, then re-import it back through there, double-click, Control, Alt, Shape. Most of us who use Macs can't even use PCs and vice versa. There's this level of niche expertise that you need to get beyond that 10%. That's gone.
Yeah.
That's the biggest rule change of all for me, I think, with this sort of stuff. That I just don't know how to use this thing. You're already seeing decks for preparing, PowerPoint things now, where it's just natural language. Can I have a 12-slide deck to present this that I've just given you? Great. Can I have some more graphs, please? Can that thing be a little bit clearer to understand? You could never just talk to your laptop and say, can that bit be a little bit clearer to understand? You can say that now. So the move to natural language is that rule and that change is totally game-changing across all the sort of applications we're going to see of this technology.
And how do you think that's going to manifest in the lives of a household?
In terms of people who work in particular fields, it just changes everything, because if your field requires creativity that could have been enhanced in the past by certain technological applications, but you just didn't have the core skills to do it or didn't have someone on your team who could, if that barrier's gone now and you just want to create, you want to put your product out there, and there's suddenly an application where you can just do the Instagram post in English, and that platform will sort it in 37 different languages and just pump it out on TikTok around the world. Or you want to create something, but you could never also put music to it or make video. Well, no, you can. Yeah. That's just 3 minutes on SoundRaw or Udio or whatever, and you've now created a soundtrack for your own presentation with graphics and video. And the only limits now in that sort of creative space are your own creativity. I think that changes everything. Yeah. And then in the day-to-day lives of people, I think the integration into everyday devices is going to be incredible. You saw Google launch Project Astra, where the woman's just walking around the office with the phone. She goes up to the window and goes, and where do you think I might be? Holds it to the window, and 2 seconds later, the platform says, I think you're in the King's Cross area of London, known for its traffic, blah, 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 blah. Bang. That change of the role of the everyday device is going to be... we think these things are amazing now compared to the phones we grew up with. Yeah. The phone of 5 years, you're going to look at this thing as a total brick. 20 years ago, this thing I hold here was the greatest supercomputer in the world. You're going to use this as a paperweight in a few years compared to the technological enhancement you're going to have on everyday devices.
What's the dark side to that?
Oh, there is none. I say, having been sent back by the future to make me answer that question. There's so many potential challenges in this space. Some of them, there's shorter term and longer term ones. Longer term, it's an open question as much as a potential dark side, but do we move into a world where there's just 4 or 5 big providers and you buy into one silo and everything is locked in there?
I mean, we're starting to see that with Apple.
Or will Amazon. It be truly democratised, and can you just cross-platform, grab things and move that? So that's questionable. Medium term, some of these organisations are burning through coin at the moment. Are they going to get to a point of monetising their output before the business model just falls over and takes maybe a significant chunk of the stock market with it. Misinformation, disinformation, really challenging.
I want to pick into this one in a bit.
Yeah, okay. And then there's the whole issue of a globalised intelligence. We'll get to that as well. Misinformation, disinformation I find fascinating because it works on the really big scale and on the really small scale as well. So on the big scale, Mark Kelly, the former astronaut, now an American senator, was briefed. He's on the Intelligence Senate, US Senate Intelligence Committee. He revealed the other day he thought of all the political content and comment in online forums in the US at the moment, in the lead up to the election, obviously, 20 to 30% of it seems to be coming out of Russia, Iran and China. And that's not well-meaning citizens just having their 5 cents worth on comparative American politics. And the real interesting thing with those agents is they're not, a lot of them are not going, okay, we want Trump to win, let's just do everything we can for Trump. Or Harris, they're just going, let's just muddy the water as much as we can. We don't really care who wins. We ideally want a really close result, so close and so contentious that 10% of the losing side say, fuck it, let's just go and hang the vice president, right? That they're just trying to create that sort of... Yeah. And on the more personal level, you're starting to see now, if you're the parent, if you have any influence in the life of a teenage boy in particular, you have to have some really open, honest conversations. Dude, if you're on your socials, just tooling around, and some really hot girl starts chatting and then says, hey, we're getting on pretty well, send us a pic. For the love of God, don't send a pic, because she is a Eastern European criminal, and the moment she gets that pic, that compromising pic of you, that conversation is going to turn very quickly. And if you can't put $500 in a Bitcoin account or buy a few gift cards, that's going to be exposed to your social... We've seen kids in Australia already make the worst possible decisions they can make in those situations. So that whole who you can trust online thing and the ability of bad agents to manipulate these new technologies at the speed that they come on is just stunning.
Yeah. And I think what I find really scary is the internet is going to become broadly unusable or unsearchable very, very soon, when you can generate thousands and thousands of pieces of content, from your bedroom like that, using those tools, those supercomputers.
This was I was lucky enough to do the opening with Amy Webb, the opening interview last year at South by Southwest, and she was exactly predicting this in her trends report that she does every year in Austin. She brought it to Australia. And she thinks it's a completely open question. Do we go down a line of where the internet is just, wow, this is amazing. Through natural language, I now have access to everything in the world I could possibly want in just a well-phrased sentence and people. Or does it just become this cesspit of referrals and compromise, and you're just being driven down a path to buy rubbish of the poorest possible quality and so much? Remember the early days of email? Then you had that spam wave. Yeah. But remember when it was normal just to wake up, check your email folder, and 80% of it was spam, right? That could well just become all content on the internet in terms of...
That was a very well timed...
Was it? Did you like that? Do you remember? It was like Law and Order. Down. Yeah, it's completely open as to which of those we could go down, and you're going to need some very well-informed, good actors with real clarity to make sure it doesn't just become that.
What's the antidote particularly to the social and economic harms for young Australians that are grappling with how to navigate what is a very quickly changing information ecology?
Yeah, it's really challenging because there's a lot of really obvious in principle correct answers. Education and all that.
Well, in principle, a lot of things work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, let's teach the kids a bit more civics in school. Yep, knock yourself out. It's really challenging. One thing that's to a degree heartening is at least a lot of these problems we have spotted the potential of. And really smart people are trying, I think, with the best of intentions, to try and do something positive there. The challenge, as much as anything, is either the pressure it puts on it, just the market pressure to get to the end goal as quickly as possible. And if you can get there quicker by trimming back on safeguards and full testing and all that, there's an incentive to do that. And also the bad actors. You'll remember beginning of last year when GPT-4 drops and everyone just goes, wow, this is a bit full on. I know. Here's a list of very intelligent, respectable people saying, how about a 6-month moratorium on any work in this area just while we work out what's going on? Now, at one level that makes sense, right? But by definition, if you're going to obey a 6-month moratorium, you're probably a decent actor with the best of intentions. if I'm running a Russian bot farm out of my basement and you take a 6-month moratorium, fucking happy days for me. Because when you come back in the game, you won't recognise the beasts I've got churning out my fishing and my my pig stuffing and all that sort of stuff. And so it's a really challenging space. And that's before we get to if there's going to be a generalised super intelligence.
And that's where I was about to go
let's
next.
do it.
What happens? You use this this juxtaposition between you and the layperson being, an intimidating mathematician, and then you get into a room of mathematicians. What happens when you get into a room of general AI?
So I did this session also last year at South by. There's a gentleman at the University of Sydney called Geordie Williamson, who's in the conversation of who's the best mathematicians in the world, right? As opposed to at any given time in women's tennis, I can say, even that's a surface by surface, any given time in women's golf, I can tell you who the best female golfer in the world is. So they all play against each other. There's a ranking system. She's number one, right? You can't really say that with mathematics, but there's a band of people who are the best in the world. He's in that sort of class. And for a long time we thought with these sort of applications of AI and the previous ones before generative AI, so neural networks, those sort of reinforcement learning models, the AI you might have heard of that took chess from just told the rules, not shown any previous games, no practice, didn't play, it was just told, these are the rules of something we call chess, why don't you have a go? And in 4 hours played 5 million games against parallel versions of itself and got to the point where it was not only had rediscovered all human tactics, not only could beat any human who will ever live, could beat the very best chess-designed super engines we'd already designed that could already beat the very best humans who ever. Like just stratospheric performance in 4 hours from zero, right?
Same thing happened with Go, didn't it?
Go,
chess,
rewrote
the rules.
All that, Japanese chess, the whole sort of thing, right? So, but we wondered if those applications could make a genuine insight into cutting-edge pure mathematics. Because the answers aren't out there, and it's not just a keep crunching and I'll calculate so many trillions of positions, I will just be better than humans could be. So Geordie spoke last year about some work he'd done, and I'm paraphrasing, I think I've kept the spirit of it, but they were basically looking at this complex geometric object and trying to work out what's the formula that describes this geometric object. And the formula they came up with, which is correct, was the formula is blah, blah, blah plus yada, yada, yada. And I've simplified things slightly with my use of the word blah and yada there, but blah, blah, blah plus yada, yada, yada. And looking at that formula, he said to me, the blah, 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 that's what we humans thought the answer would look like. The yada, 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 the AI led us entirely to that. He can currently look at the yada, yada, yada and see, okay, you're right. But in some aspects of it, he's holding on by his fingernails to see that. I think it's quite realistic that we will have a few years from now these systems putting forward proofs to certain mathematical problems
that we just can't connect.
We just got either it's so long and complex that even if we can follow it line by line, it'll take more than the lifetime of any human to get it, or it's just invented its own sub-mathematics to get there. That, like if we lived on a planet where, if you got to a planet somewhere in the solar system, or in the universe, and they'd got as far as fish, it's fucking amazing. Fish and trees, right? Yeah. But that's where it got to. No one on that planet understands Pythagoras' theorem. Pythagoras' theorem is still absolutely correct on that planet. It's just beyond the cognitive capacity of anything on that planet. There is maths out there off to eternity that's too hard for humans to understand, but there's no guarantee that AI can't understand it or present it to us and say, yeah. And so we will have to get into this point possibly of just trusting the network that certain things are true. And that's a really interesting philosophical place to be in.
Yeah, and I feel as though we're right at this point where you've got to pick a side on whether or not the impact of this progression is net positive or net negative, and where do you stand in that debate?
It's really complicated. The thing I like to think about is here's something we will have to consider as thinking beings, that like as to whether we ever, people ask me, is it going to be alive? Is it going to be conscious? Is it going to be intelligent? And in answering that question, you're also answering a very deep philosophical question about what do you mean by intelligence and consciousness and all. Let's park that. Let's say there's a point down the end that is intelligence or whatever. We're going to get to a point before that where these things are so similar to being alive and conscious and intelligent that we just won't know the difference, right? The thought experiment I want everyone to do is put your hands up if you own a dog, right? Cool. Keep your hand up. And keep your hand up if you've got a deep emotional connection to that dog, right? Now, this is what happens every time, right? First of all, no one put their hand down. And you might have noticed one guy who hadn't had his hand up actually went, oh, fuck, now that you mention it, yeah, I do, right? Like, dogs are I'm sorry to hear that. Dogs are like that, right? Why do you love your dog? Because your dog, you go home when you've been away for 3 days or something, you come home and there's your dog, running up the corridor, tongue out, all over you. Your dog misses you. Misses you so much. Your dog misses. Does your dog miss you? Do you have any idea? I don't even know if we can prove with an fMRI that a dog does miss anything. Your dog behaves so much like what you would expect something that missed you to behave. You say, my dog misses me. We will have an uncanny valley before we get to a generalised intelligence, if we ever do or not, where you simply can't tell if this thing is conscious or not.
Yeah.
You'll get home from 5 days at South by Southwest and your sort of tricked up version of an Alexa now will be saying to you, how are you going? Welcome back. Glad you enjoyed your time away. Congratulations on the speeches you gave. Saw the reviews. They were amazing. The podcast was rating its tits off. Well done. Saw you on Instagram. You enjoyed yourself, didn't you? Sorry the flight was a bit delayed. Do you want dinner? We can have it here in 5 minutes. Don't worry about the kids. They're home. They've done their homework. I've fed them. They've gone to bed.
And that's before you get to intimacy.
Exactly. Well, for me, that was intimacy, but yeah. But my mum gives the example. My mum lives in a retirement lodge, and 40% of her fellow residents get 0 visitors a year. They just have no family, right? She describes Christmas lunch at her lodge as one of the saddest things she'll ever see. It's 15 people having lunch together, and the only thing they have in common is even on Christmas Day, there is no one to come and visit them. And a significant number of these people go through cognitive decline where they would really be quite comfortable having the same conversation 3 or 4 times a day or just watching their favourite movie. There's going to be a space in that. Now, if I live in the same city as my mum and I just go, well, I don't need to do this anymore, Alexa can do it, I'm an arsehole. But for a whole raft of an increasingly ageing population, these pseudo-lifelike applications are going to play an incredible role in some of the more humane things that we want to do as a society.
And I think to your point, there is an equally concern at the younger end of the spectrum for isolated teens where we're already seeing, these hallmarks of intimate relationships in the scientific sense with bots and with, these algorithmic personifications of people.
And that's the nasty end of the other end of it with your Gen AI. I'll say to anyone who listens, like if I was at the Royal Shakespeare Society, like I'm sure most people listening to understand, if you have just a big open AI like ChatGPT and it roams over the internet and it doesn't know the answer, it'll make things up, it'll hallucinate, They're quite funny. If you build your own bespoke, walled-off large language model and just control the quality of what goes in, you're considerably more likely to get... Australia's largest law firm, Ellison, already has its own bespoke GPT that's creating legal briefs. Now, you don't just run into court with one of those now, but they're doing 80% of the work of some kid from UNSW who you're paying $110,000 a year to. Yeah. Really interesting case study for big law going into the future. But if I was on the board of the Royal Shakespeare Society, I'd be building Shake GPT right now. Walled off from the rest of the internet, throw the plays in there, throw the sonnets in there, throw 1,000 scholarly articles, pay the scholars a bit of money for them each, and every kid around the world who's doing Shakespeare for their uni or O-level or A-level or HSC or VCE finals, for $1 a month can have in their phone the greatest Shakespeare scholar in human history. Yeah. So to the negative of the dependency bots and all, but if we have a world now where any kid in the world who wants to know just needs access to 5G and they can do that, and you don't have to go to St Lardydar's High School or anything, you don't have to live in the CBD of Melbourne, anywhere in the world you can have the greatest scholar in anything you want as an application on a device. The upside there is incredible.
Yeah. Access to opportunity all of a sudden.
Governed then purely by just the desire and the willing to... Now, some kids, but if you want to work hard enough, you've got so much more potential to reach out and grab it. That's really interesting.
Look, you and I could talk for hours on this.
Let's do that.
Last one from me. If you could give our fabulous audience some advice on how to prepare for a world where these tectonic shifts are going to play out, whether we like it or not, what advice would you give to us?
So, I mean, I'm lucky I do for my job, hosting events and keynoting at industry events and things like that. I stay on top of a lot of this stuff because it's my gig. I struggle to stay on top of anywhere near all of it, and most of it I'm just exposing myself in a sort of sufficiently superficial level to be able to say, I understand these things work, and talk to people about it a bit. You don't want me writing your code or building your own ward off GPT or anything like that. And even I really struggle to stay on top. Come at it with a curiosity. Please don't be overwhelmed by this space and say it's all just too much. And the great thing about these technologies and the literature that's out there on it is you can gain insights at whatever level is appropriate for you, right? If you don't really understand what a large language model is, simply hop on ChatGPT and say, can you give me a 1,000-word summary of what a large language model is? So I'm a smart 14-year-old who's never heard the phrase before now. Great. Now can you give me an 800-word summary as I'm a smart 16-year-old who's used ChatGPT at a basic level but doesn't really understand what it's doing? Great. Can you now give me a 500-word 10 dot point summary as though I've done a first-year university computer science? And you can tailor, like there's never been less barrier to accessing that information now in some ways if you want. You have to have the curiosity to do it. Because if you just go too hard, or I'll get round to it, or I'll wait till it's really important, I think you're going to miss a spot on a fast-moving, really important bus. And this is not. I don't think expertise and curiosity and at least basic knowledge in this field is a nice to have. I think it is a have to have. You don't have to be an expert on any of this stuff. But even when I talk to groups, I'll just do that survey quickly here, which I expect skews fairly much. But hands up, audience, if you've heard of ChatGPT. Everyone puts their hand up, and you'll go, good on you. And keep the hand up, Right? 18 months ago, none of you put your hand up. So keep that hand up. Hands up if you've used it, at least in a sort of introductory way, some large language model a little bit of the time. Great, got 90% of the hands still up. Keep your hand up if you get that hand dirty. If it gets under the hood every day and you're using these technologies in your workplace, good. Yeah, and about 2/3 of the hands went down.
More, I'd say 80% come down.
In a general audience, a smaller number. Hands up, keep them up if you've gone beyond just word for word and got into generating video, music, that sort of stuff, coding. Right, yeah, this is a pretty typical audience. You're down to 5% of the crowd once you get those, don't you? You can put your hands down, you're a very polite thing, right? A couple of coding nerds and that's it.
Very well-behaved audience.
But that has to change.
Yeah.
It's been 18 months now. And it's really easy to be intimidated by it and go, I don't know how to use it in my work. I'm not an expert. You don't need to be.
Yeah.
Just start dipping your fingers in now, and you'll even find your thing might be making music, might be video images. It might be just leveling up on something you've always wanted to understand, just going at it bit by bit. Your work might require summarising documents. Whatever it is, there are incredible applications now out there to help you do your stuff, but you have to. It's a very murky, weird, confusing world. You have to be brave enough to take that first step. That's the bit of advice.
I love that. And serendipitously aligned to the mantra of South by Southwest Sydney.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Spencer.
Hey! Thanks.